Hello Gemini, this is your extended reading. So this part of the reading is all about the unseen, right? Remember when we were talking about right at the end of the first part how you are building your destination as you go. So it's not something that is ready made for you to just reach it, right? It's something that is being built because of what you are. It's almost like the journey itself is building the destination. It's not just, from point A to point B. This is something that is information, right? You are shaping it as you gather and then expand, right? So here in the extended, because we're beginning with this magician card, I had a lot of it's almost like a remembrance from when I was a kid and how I was really fascinated by magician shows, in kids' birthday parties. And I was always trying to find the flaws, or I was trying to find the trick, right? So trying to find the trick prevents you from having fun and enjoying the magic itself, right? It's almost like you're trying to see where they are going to make a mistake, right? So I remember as a kid, not enjoying too much the magic itself, really being fascinated, but really trying to find the logic behind it. And maybe you being a Gemini, being very mentally intelligent but also smart and well versed, maybe it's like you're trying to study all of the tricks of the magician and missing out the fun part of it, right? The amusing part of it, right? And this, this magician was talking about how it's like the unknown destination that it's not set in stone, that is co-created along the way, right? That you are not entirely certain of what is going to be or what it's going to look like, right? And even when you're going to get there, because it's almost like you're always getting there because it's always being shaped and always being created. So this is like the investigation perhaps behind the magician trick that is trying to make this more fun, like a more magical experience to you, right? And there is a certain waiting game, because the hanged man here coming next, it's almost like I felt like you were hanging, right? But the interesting thing, because I'm going to skip the card that come next, and I'm going to go through to the Page of Swords that came with the message of hanging by a thread. So with the hanged man, I was already sensing that, trying to investigate or trying to be too logical and see beyond, see the all of the engine or all of the processes behind the magic itself, right? It is putting you in this suspension mode that feels like nothing really happens, right? It's like you're not cracking the code, you're not cracking the magic, and you're not feeling the magic, or maybe you're not being surprised by the magic, right? It's like if they were trying to make it a very lovely experience of like bringing a surprise element that could take your breath away or just give you this awe-striking moment, right? It's like maybe you are experiencing this because it could be something that, you feel as restrictive, or something that is not, that is preventing you from following your heart's guidance. But I feel like at some point there's something that, when this King of Pentacles says to you, it is what it is, you just have to follow along. it feels too, it crushes you in a sense, right? It crushes your heart in a way that it really brings you down. It's like if it's this King of Pentacles point to bring you down to earth, it's like they managed to do so, but also like maybe make you lose a little bit of hope, right? In a sense that it's like if you're trying to do something that is very different and this guy or this girl or this person says, no, you just have to follow this path, it can be very, you know, very frustrating, right? But knowing this, I feel like this is the trick, right? This is the trick that is behind the magic. Understanding that this destination is not as strict or rigid as this guy is making it sound, right? It's like it is more open and depends on the elements that you gather. It's not that because they are saying that this is what it is, that you have to follow exactly what they're saying. It's just the process or the dynamic, right? So even though, you know, I'm trying to uplift you a little bit here, Gemini, because I feel like maybe you are in this standstill mode of trying to crack the magic, and it's almost like you're not achieving your goal of cracking the magic, even though, you know, it is pretty obvious to me here, and I'm trying to say it to you so that you can feel like you have cracked it, right? So, but you're not feeling the magic too, right? So maybe this is here, you know, two major arcanas again, you know, side by side, trying to give you this reassurance, right? That the magic is here and it can be perceived even from this perspective that you are being hanged or that you are hanging by a thread, right? So here in between the Hanged Man and this page of swords, sorry, we have the Nine of Pentacles. And it's interesting because if these two cards were very fragile in a sense that they were showing me like this very thin line or whatever it is that you are hanging to until today, that it gives you the sense of support, right? I'm seeing this, it's almost like this lifeline kind of thing, or this it's like the last resource or the last bit of like maybe the last hope of it's not, how do I express this? It's so sensitive. It's like it's not that you're being detoured from your heart's desire or your heart's guidance, but in a sense it is what you are sensing, because this Nine of Pentacles here, it feels a little bit like having to follow a path, you know, going to school and then going to college and then finding a good job and having a really good salary. And it's almost like this the Nine of Pentacles is like the path to a human independence, right? It's almost like that very traditional way of living and way of sustaining yourself, like finding a way to really make a living that is feasible in the practical sense, right? Or in these very mundane kind of requirements, right? So there is this sense that you are hanging by a thread, and that is maybe the reason why you feel like you cannot perceive the magic that is going on, because if you do, it's almost like you're going to let go of the last thread that is, or the last hope that is keeping you connected to what you think is your heart's guidance, right? Because it's almost like it's too contrasty, right? The contrast between what you believe that you have led your life until now and what this King of Pentacles is not only proposing to you, but what they are encouraging you to follow. It's something that to you, it's almost like it really makes you lose your innocence or lose your curiosity lose what you have, well, what you had dreamt of when you were a kid, right? And that you were hanging to it until today, right? Or until this King of Pentacles shows up and says, like, hey, Gemini, we have to get you down to earth because there are practical things that you have to deal with, and there is a mundane life that you have to take care of. So, yes, maybe you feel like you're losing your grounds when you are asked to find your grounds. That can be so paradoxical, but yeah, it is what it is. But the interesting thing here is that it's almost like this magician feels compassion towards you, and it's like if they notice, right, that you are so observant to the point that you're like trying to find like the trick behind the magic, right? It's like they, because you know, to me, the magician and me, you know, essentially all the major arcana, they come from this higher realm, right? It's almost like they cross the veil to reach us in a way that is very compassionate and very loving, right? Most of the times, right? There are exceptions, obviously, depending on the context and depending on the message itself. But here, essentially, they're coming through as like this message of it is what it is. This is how this dimension works. It's not something that is there to punish you. It's actually quite the opposite. It's something that is meant to be seen as magical, as a magical experience, one that you, once you have understood the logic of it, or the way of doing things, it's like, you know, this contraction and expansion, contraction and expansion. It's like you can enjoy the magic. You can you know, stop trying to find the mistakes behind it, right? So this last line here in the extended is talking about, it's tricky in a sense because the reference that I'm receiving can be religious, and I'm not a very religious person. I don't know much about it. So it's purely intuitive too, and based on this one image, on, you know, based on an image, based on a phrase that I have heard before. And well, let me show you the cards. The Two of Pentacles, this Knight of Wands, and the Seven of Swords. So let's begin with this Two of Pentacles. If you think that this traditional path is something that is too calcified or too rigid, it's actually a bridge, right? A bridge that is very solid. And this, it's almost like, remember, if you feel like you are hanging by a thread, it's almost like there is some risk, right, that you're taking in letting go of your heart's desire, your heart's guidance, and just giving a chance to what this King of Pentacles is talking to you about and offering you as advice or as another guidance in a very practical manner. What they're doing is in complete connection to what this divine realm is all about, and this dynamic that has been playing forever. So, the Two of Pentacles. This card is reminding me of that image when you have like a very troublesome phase of your life, right? And you feel like you are like really suffering, you have hit rock bottom, that you have like, you are in a bad spot, right? And you feel like you are doing it all by yourself, because whenever you ask for divine help or divine guidance. It's almost like you have been abandoned or something like that. So the image that I saw with the two pentacles, because these two pentacles usually give me the image of footprints. If you feel like you're hanging by a thread, that you have to maybe take on a very traditional path to make a living, right? This is talking about you being guided, you being protected, and you being carried, right? So I don't know exactly how it goes in English because I've seen it in Portuguese, but so whenever you feel like you are in a hard time, know that the two footprints that are leaving the mark, you know, in the sand or in the ground, here we're talking about, you know, being grounded, these footsteps are God's footsteps, right? Because they are carrying you, because they are suspending you, because they are intently carrying you from this moment of maybe something that could be even worse, right? So if you feel like you are hanging by a thread, you are waiting and nothing happens, and you don't have much choice other than following, you know, something that is more sensible or something that is more responsible, right? And even if that requires, you know, you losing track of your child's dream, or like whenever your childhood dream, or whenever you thought like, you know, you could carry on with your, just with your imagination, right? Know that you are being carried, right? That things, they don't always look bright and sunny, and you know, things can be very harsh and rigid, right? And very dense, especially here, right? And it requires work and effort and gathering of the elements, and then risking yourself in a path that you are helping to build. But you are being carried, you are being protected by this Knight of Wands. The interesting thing is that because of the Five of Wands here, this guy here is coming through as guidance, like, you know, some sort of angel or spirit guide, or, you know, energetic presence that comes as inspiration, right? It's almost like that light at the end of the tunnel that is reminding you of this, that you are able to create your destination. It's not something that you are being pushed towards. It's like you are creating it. So whenever you remember that you're being carried, that instead of waiting and waiting and waiting, or feel like you're hanging by a thread and that you're going to lose track of who you were, or your innocence, or your heart, right? Or your own self, knowing that you know where to go. It's like, remember that in this dimension, yes, there are certain things that only you can do, but even in those moments, because you are like with your steps ahead, right? You are co-creating where you're going. And by doing so, it's like this angel or this guide, or just this, it's almost like this shift in the atmosphere, right, that is surrounding you, comes in to remind you that your steps matter, because it's not just your steps, it's almost like your steps are being carried by the steps of God, right? By this very powerful, very, it's just, it's like God is steering the wheel, but so are you, right? And so your steps are God's steps. And, you know, I don't like to mention God because, you know, you can use whatever word you believe in to represent this higher force, right? This higher power. So ending here with the Seven of Swords, this is going back to that advice that the King of Pentacles gave you, Gemini, regards to, you know, the elements or the things, the resources, the money, the experiences that you gather. And that is important when you are in this phase of collecting and contracting, right? Because if you understand that your steps are God's steps, let's say it, and you know that you have this help, right? This energetic help. You know that you are being protected from worst experiences, right? Let's put it that way. It's almost like I'm seeing it's like there is some sort of plaque or some sort of bridge, right, that is being placed over a very treacherous patch or a very dangerous threat, right? It's like this can harm you. This can really affect you, right, in a negative way. And so know that you are being carried, but also it's almost like you are being carried, but you are carrying God, or it's like this very dubious or ambiguous thing, right? It's like once you understand how this logic works here, right, in Earth, you understand also how Earth is created, or how destinies are created, right? And how your destiny is created, because it's not definite, right? But it's almost like they are here to remind you that. And this is where the compassion of the magician is shown, right? Because what they're saying, it's like, it's almost like this Knight of Wands is like a messenger from the realm of the magician. So what this magician is reassuring with all of this is that do not try to find the mistakes or the leaks in, like, behind the magic, or behind goodness, right? Or behind amusement, or behind beauty. It is what it is. It doesn't have any tricks, right? So, well, we could say that the trick here is to prevent you from worse scenarios. Does it make sense? Because, you know, ending with the Seven of Swords, it's like the Knight of Wands is always here to remind you that whenever you, well, it's coming through as, you know, walking with conscious steps, because you know that your steps are God's steps, and vice versa, right? And when you do so, it's like you can walk over water in a sense, or even like over this very treacherous path, this very it's coming through as like a troubled water, right? So the guidance that the King of Pentacles gave you, that once you collect the elements to build your own path, is like you're creating patches of safety to walk over troubled water, right? So do not disconsider, is that how I say it? It's like, do not skip through considering this, right? This path, because this provides safety or stability or solidity in a moment that could feel like, you know, it could get worse, but it didn't, because you have taken a path that it has been taken. So I could say, like, this is almost like there's nothing wrong with following a path that has been already paved, right? It's like you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? So let's see what the astrological runes want to add as a final guidance for you, Gemini. Okay. Yeah. So we have Saturn, and Saturn is, you know, the embodiment of the, well, in your perception, the rigidity of the King of Pentacles, right? So Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, and you know, Capricorn can be, you know, a lot like this King of Pentacles, and most of all to you, Gemini, because it's a very earthy, very grounded, very determined, very consistent, and not flexible sign like you. It's very different than you, right? So Saturn talks about a lot of things, but there are two things that are, you know, just popping up more in my head right now. One is about time, because there's a lot of patience required to understand the logic behind this system, right? The contracting and expanding kind of dynamic. So there is time and patience there. But whenever you feel like nothing is happening, or that you're hanging by a thread, that you're going to lose your faith, lose your hope, know that you are being carried, and carried by something that is making you stronger. It's almost like it's part of your maturity process, right? So the other thing that is popping with the Saturn is about the reward that comes when you follow along this very traditional path, right? Especially because Saturn is all about like success after a long path, right? So this may take a while, but focus on the magic instead of the tricks and the mistakes that you're trying to find, or the flaws, right? It's like Saturn will reward you, Gemini, in a sense of not seeing this as a burden, right? Seeing this as a constructive criticism, or like an invitation to build yourself from the ground up, right? In a very solid kind of way. So that was pretty tough and dense. But I hope this was insightful to you, Gemini. Thank you so much for being here with me, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.